this computer. All right. Hey, everybody. We have returned. Hooray. First town hall of the year. You heard me right before we started the recording. I said, first one, not a real plan, but that's okay. I think that'll actually be a good thing, just to kind of a chat and get ourselves back on track a little bit with these, and see where we want to talk as we go forward. It's good to see you all here. I see there's a handful of us here, a couple of us on video, most of us not. That is my agency, so we're hosting this series. We are the Richard West Assistive Technology Advocacy Center in New Jersey. We are the Assistive Technology Act Project for New Jersey, and we are hosting these sessions. That does not mean we are leading the entire conversation, but we're hosting these sessions. These people may show up, they may not. One of them's already here. Murph, I'm going to add you officially to the picture at some point because I think you'll keep showing up, so I'm going to add your picture. If you've never experienced one of these town halls before, they are incredibly low key, if you hadn't already gathered that. And it's just an opportunity for us to get together and chat. We'll have some guiding questions most weeks. Some weeks we might not even have guiding questions. We might just have a conversation. And we'll have a kind of a rotating cast of, dare I say, characters. Pop through. I know, I could not say that. I was too committed to it already. You know, I think I like to look at this as an opportunity to catch up with people visually and have a conversation. I think of this as an extension of our weekly AT chat that happens on Wednesday nights, where that happens on Twitter. And this is a little bit different, but yet it's a lot the same, if that makes sense. It's just a conversation. And this can be whatever anybody wants it to be, quite honestly. And I think that's the whole point. We can share our ideas and our thoughts with each other and just have a really good conversation. And so, Sandy, I saw you in the chat. Hello, welcome. Happy to kick off the new school year with everybody. Speaking of AT chat, if you've never participated, it is our weekly Twitter chat. Happens on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we have a website, so you can go visit our website at atchat.info, which has all of the past chat wakelets, so all of the, I lost the word, compilations of all the chats previous, and some other resources there. We'll drop some information from these events there, so it'll act as kind of a clearinghouse for information as we go forward. So you could always find some information there. Like I said, let's chat. This is about you guys. There you go. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Feel free, turn your camera on if you so desire, put your mic on if you feel like it. If you want to just participate in the chat, that's cool too. Either way, this is about as, like I said, low-key and non-threatening as it could be. So participate in whatever way you want to participate. If you want to get on and we can just talk about Alyssa's background and what's happening in her office for the next hour, I'm game for that too. I'm interested in what's going on there. Doesn't matter to me. So you want to start with this? We always start with this, kind of a positive. We'll start with positives and then we'll dig through some of the other stuff that might be happening. Anything positive that happened in the past week? I know we're all coming into this in different, on a little bit different timetables. Now, I know some of us have already been in school for a few weeks. Some of us, I mean, personally in New Jersey, last week was our first week of school. So we're just starting. So I think there's everything in between right now. But any positives that somebody wants to share or some success that you had?
I can jump in. I got one.
Go ahead.
Over the past couple of years in Wisconsin, and I'm kind of hoping Cassie Frost joins in the meeting. We just got off a meeting together with the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin, and our DPI used to support WADI, which a lot of people know about, the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Initiative, and the money behind it went away like about 15 years ago already, and those WADI members have kind of had this grassroots effort to keep their WADI manual up to date and all of that. But in the state, we really haven't had a whole lot of AT support at the state level. And so we started WATER, in the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Regional Networks, which are just grassroots sort of groups that are professional learning communities to try to support therapists and educators throughout the state of Wisconsin. And we hold those meetings quarterly. So from that work, we met Andrea Bertoni, who is our speech and language consultant at DPI, and she also supports the area of assistive technology. Well, all of that work, all of the meetings we've had, all of the advocating that we have done has finally paid off because we were invited to help be a part of a work group because the Department of Public Instruction got money for the CARES Act. And so now we have a big chunk of money to help support assistive technology within the state of Wisconsin. So that was super exciting, and I think we're going to be able to do some really great things over the next 2 years. And I was excited because one of the leaders of that work group, the funding goes for 2 years, but he's already talking about how we can continue this work. And one of my big goals is that it doesn't end up like WADI and funding runs out. And so they're already thinking about how we can do that. And there was a lot of talk about universal design for learning and during our meeting. So very, very exciting. We worked so hard over the last 2 years to get something started a little bit better in the state of Wisconsin. So that's my good news to share.
That's awesome news. Yeah, that officially falls into awesome news category. That's great. And as a director of one of the state AT projects, I would say reach out to that group and partner with them. If there's a fear that funding would go away and this work would get lost, those AT acts have fairly, I'm going to call it consistent funding. They've been funded for a long time. The anticipation is that they will be funded for a long time.
Yeah, and the director of the AT Act is actually part of this work group as well. And we've connected with her quite a bit in the last 2 years just through our water meetings. But I think we really, through our water meetings, started this conversation and really have kind of pushed the need. And now I think it's getting noticed at DPI. So that's great.
That's awesome. Congrats to you guys. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Excellent. Anybody else? Now you see how this works. Throw something else in there. I saw microphones kick on. That's why I'm anxiously leaning in. I'm watching the participant list. All right. Nobody else? Nothing. No success? I could share one, but I talk all the time. I'm trying to not have a conversation. I'm trying to be quieter.
I'll share one.
Go ahead.
We started students back last week too. So we've been back in business for 1 week. So it can be kind of hard to think of a success because it's all so crazy. But in our district, I'm the AT consultant for our public school district. And historically, before I started here like 4 years ago, AAC devices were pretty much just like the tech department gave you an iPad. And so since I've been here, I'm saying, oh, well, we can get these devices funded and they're a little more durable and louder and like all these things. And our special ed director was saying, we just want to provide kids with immediate access to AAC, which, I totally appreciate, but there was some pushback. We got a new special ed director in July. I loved our old special ed director too, but our new special ed director is really receptive to getting kids funded devices, to giving us time to write reports and to do trials. So I'm really excited. I've been reaching out to our regional consultants and getting to work with them a little bit more. So that's been a positive, and I think a step in the right direction.
That is a good step. That idea of having someone at a decision maker level respect the process a little bit, which is awesome. Instead of having to constantly fight and say, no, it's so much more than just getting this thing in front of somebody. Yeah,
right.
cool. That's great. Love
Well,
that.
and Sarah, where I am, there aren't a lot of other districts around me where the district themselves is taking on the onus of doing the funded devices. We do it in our district, and I think people look at us like, why are you? Because this is the option for this kiddo to get a device. So it's good to hear that there are other school districts that that are doing that funding end of things, because again, sometimes a parent doesn't have a private therapist and still needs a device, and what are you going to do? Say, nope, sorry, you're just going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, yep, exactly. I've done some private evaluations for people that live like an hour away because they can't find anybody to do it, which is just, it's sad. But also a funny thing is that before I started, we didn't have that many kids using AAC. So for the tech department to give away a couple iPads, and in the last 4 years, I think it's like quadrupled the number of kids who use AAC. So now they're like, all right, you're getting expensive.
I always say that I have this reputation in our district that I'm like Oprah, and I'm like, you get in the because I have that same reputation. We have drastically increased the number of students in our district that get devices, and we start out our trials with iPads just because it's easy for us to manage, and then we can try different apps, we can see what we like, but then we always move then to that funded trial with the device manufacturers. And I actually spent the weekend working on my speech generating device evaluation and trying to make it into a format where I have more drop boxes so that I can write them faster, because I'm writing so many and they take me so long, and I need to try to do something to streamline that process and keep up with the demand, so I'm not just always writing reports. But I wanted to mention, for anybody that doesn't do this in their district, Louis Golinker, as part of USAC, the United States Society of AAC, and I think it's still available on their website, has done some really nice webinars on why it's important for districts to do these speech generating device evaluations, and really how it's mutually beneficial to the families, and then also to the district, because the district doesn't have to pay for the cost of a high-tech dedicated system, but the family also doesn't have to necessarily pay for the evaluation because the district's doing it. And he walks through a lot of that. So definitely, if anybody doesn't do it and is interested in starting to do AEC evaluations, Louis Golinker's webinar is really great. He goes through a lot of that.
Awesome. And if
Yeah,
I
Lou actually,
and look, Sarah lives by him. We should get him in
yeah, I got to meet him in January. He lives in my town, and he said, if you want me to go talk to your supervisors at school, I'll walk over there and I'll explain the whole thing to them. So we're pretty lucky.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Yeah, if possible, Jennifer, can you drop the link maybe in the chat?
Sure, I'll go and hunt it down.
Yeah, if you can. If not, we'll find it. I would do it, but I'm in screen sharing mode, and you guys don't want to watch my web searching capabilities, as much fun as that might be. That's good stuff.
Yeah, see, Sarah, we weren't the only ones working this weekend. Jennifer was working too.
Oh, that could be a whole other story. That should be a whole other town hall, whether you should work on a weekend or not.
We were talking about it back and forth on Twitter and trying to figure out, how do we balance working, especially for like the 9-to-5 job over the weekend. Yeah. But yeah, that's a whole different, that's a deep and wide topic.
It is, but it's one isn't it funny that and it's not funny, I say that in the wrong way, that we always push that topic to the side, and it's such a deep topic. I have these battles every weekend. I'm like, I see my laptop, I hear the siren song that I should go over there and answer, and then I debate whether to walk away. Yesterday this is how my laptop sat all day yesterday next to me on the couch as I watched football, and I'm like, all right, at some point when it all goes wrong, and I'm a Giants fan, so it went wrong quickly. I said to my wife, I'm going to leave this here, because if it all goes wrong, I'm going to start working. And then about 4 minutes into the game, it all went wrong. And she was watching me, and I never picked up my laptop. And I said, no, I'm just so annoyed right now. I can't even pick up my laptop right now. But yeah, this idea of a little time for yourself and balancing that work stuff also, which is tricky. Let's make that, I'm going to write myself a note. We're going to make that a topic for one of these coming up. Unless you want to do it as an AT chat.
Both and, either or.
Both and, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think it'll be a different conversation in each spot. Self-care. I feel like somebody was going to do that topic.
So Cassie and I did it last year. We did self-care, but we didn't talk specifically about like the dividing line for work. There was a little tinge in there, but it wasn't all about.
I was
boundaries in work.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too, that I feel like it is beyond self-care. It's not just like doing something for yourself, but how do you draw the boundaries between, and like what Alyssa and I were talking about was, we have like our 9 to 5 job at school, but then we also do a lot of extra like presenting and things like that, which we love to do and we want to make time for. But when you are working every single night at your 9 to 5 job, then it kind of takes away from the part that you really enjoy. So we kind of were brainstorming of how do we find that balance and where do we draw different lines and still feel like we're doing a good job in every aspect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you come up with any answers to the $1 million question? Because
what'd you
I'm
decide?
very eager to hear.
I will say that it was funny because I was talking to Lauren Enders about our AAC after work this week, and we kind of got on the same topic as Alyssa and I were talking about it. And all three of us, sort of the consensus, and I don't want to totally speak for you, Alyssa, but talked about really trying, and I'm going to try this year, to leave my work at work. And I honestly don't have enough time to do that AT part of my job because I have a part-time caseload too, but that's the time that I'm given, and I can't really make up for that at home, where the things like Alyssa and I were saying, how much we enjoy presenting and doing stuff for you, Mike, that's what I'm willing to do on Saturday mornings or after my kids go to bed. And Lauren said that she had started to do the same thing too, of trying to leave her school job at home, even though she's, on Facebook and, Instagram and stuff like that at home. It's more that's sort of more the part of our professional life that's for ourselves.
The passion project end of things, or the private work sometimes is what energizes you to be able to do the 9 to 5 work. And if you're doing the 9 to 5 work 24/7, you don't ever get to the feeding part of the work.
Yes. I was just thinking that same thing, is that, these things feed each other in this kind of cycle. And you're right. I like that idea of the passion project work, like like this today, or AT chat. That can't start to feel like work because that's what's supposed to recharge for the other stuff. And then it moves you through. I found it to be interesting now because you guys, I'm noticing, you've gone back to a building. You've gone somewhere. I don't go anywhere. I'm still here. And so that gets a little trickier too, but I've had a lot more years of balancing that. I'm one of those who worked from home prior to the whole entire pandemic thing. So that balance was there. It's interesting because prior, I could go somewhere if I wanted to. I just chose not to a lot of times. It was easier to work here. Now I can't even go there. And I'm like, all right, so I'm still stuck here. And I'm still doing this. And I'm doing a lot of closing the door to this room at the end of the day. So I can't see it as I walk past. And thinking about, how to do those things and balancing the love of those other projects with sometimes saying no and being okay with that. And that's been an interesting kind of progression too through this, and saying, people will ask constantly about doing things, and I like presenting at stuff, but sometimes I just have to say no. I just don't see how I could physically do that in the time you're giving. And so instead, and in the past, I might have tried to jump through hoops and worked until 11 o'clock at night to do that. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, it just doesn't, right? Yeah. And we all get there in different spots and different times, but I think I'm at that spot where I'm like, no, if I don't think I can do that comfortably, I'm just going to pass or push it back a little and say, that deadline doesn't work for me. I'm game to do that for you and with you, but we got to spread that timeline out a little bit. And maybe that's being just more comfortable in how you do things. And Jennifer said no to closing the gap this year, but yes to ATIA. It's like finding that balance, right? It's like, all right, what would work for me, and how do those things fit into the overall goal of what you want to do professionally, both as a learner and as a professional that shares. There's those two balances that we're talking about trying to figure out now. I'd love to go to every conference, but I just can't because I have this stuff called work that I have to do, right? I have to do all those things. So there's this balance, and this becomes tricky. And I see people in the chat talking about struggling with Twitter chats.
I was going to say, what are your suggestions for them of how to grow to like the Twitter chat format?
Yeah, I don't, I think it's one of those things, um, like Bridget just said, she just doesn't like it. She just flat out doesn't like it. And Sarah talks about TweetDeck, and I think, Bridget, I'm curious if you pop on your microphone and answer. Did TweetDeck help the other night?
TweetDeck was amazing the other night. It made a big difference.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about the tools you use to manage that a bit. Yeah, and I think when we said that to you on Wednesday to try TweetDeck, I mean, I can't do a chat just on, if I try to do it on my phone, I will give up quickly. But if
Yeah.
I manage it on TweetDeck, it feels like that's a little bit more manageable, but it's different. And I think Patty said it up in the chat before this. It's just different. Twitter chats are different than this.
It's very different. But you know, you did an AT chat probably 6 months ago, 8 months ago, where you did it on Zoom and everyone had their cameras on and everyone had the opportunity of chatting. And I think, you know, I've done a lot of Zoom meetings versus Zoom webinars. And with Zoom meetings, people in the beginning really didn't know how to handle Zoom meetings very well because there was lots and lots of background noise. People left their mics on. It was kind of chaos. But I think people are getting to the stage where they realize that even if they're in a meeting, they've got to be muting and unmuting all the time just to make it manageable. But Twitter, even with TweetDeck, is still, there are so many parallel chats going on, concurrent chats going on, that you kind of almost feel like you're saying some things here, but then you're missing some things over there. And then somebody might comment on something and you may not get back to that comment. So, you know, when I think of kids that have really a lot of trouble with divided attention, that's where I feel like, for me, that's a special need, because that divided attention, I feel like we all multitask, but I have a horrible time with it on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you had one word to try to define a Twitter chat, I think it's multitask is the word.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you're right, Bridget. There could be up to 6 conversations happening at any given time, and you're just trying to navigate what that is. I've had people say that they will not participate in the live Twitter chat, but when they read the wakelet afterwards, that helps because they can sort a little bit just by visually scanning through and see what people are responding back to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps a little bit. I think it's a different kind of conversation, quite honestly. I just think it's different.
So, Mike, my question would be, I thought the one that you did on Zoom was very successful, and I'm just wondering why you wouldn't do that again.
I think we will. I think what's interesting is I could argue that this has replaced the AT chat, Zoom chat. I mean, this is in essence a weekly Zoom AT chat, but it's done through Zoom. It's done through Zoom, so it's video. We could do that. I think we could easily do that and just kind of throw that in again. I think it would be interesting. It's it's just finding different ways to draw people in. Every once in a while, I try to push this idea of using Voxer because it's all audio.
Oh, yeah.
And it's different, and it's interesting because if you answer the questions and go through it, it becomes like a threaded audio. It's almost like a podcast. It's like an interview podcast, but it's not very accessible, and so that's really a bit of a struggle. And I want to continue to kind of push that because I like the idea of audio, or I should say I did like it when I spent a lot of time in the car. Now I don't sit in the car, so.
Yeah, I'm actually driving and listening to you guys and talking while I'm driving.
I just saw that you were in your car, and I was like, I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to let her be. And now she's
Well, I did
her
stop.
camera
I
pointing
did
at the
stop
ceiling,
for a
so-
moment.
Yeah.
I stopped for a moment because the next appointment I'm at, it's actually a really contentious appointment today, and I had to stop to get to some text about the appointment. But anyway, so then I was listening to you, so I thought I would jump on.
Perfect. Well, good. I'm glad that you're
So
stopped.
I
I
wasn't texting and driving.
There's no judgment here. It's fine. It's fine. You know what to do. You know how to be an adult. It's fine.
Just so you know.
Yeah, that's fine. But it is interesting. So maybe as we think about as we go forward, I mean, I wanted to put to the group too. Are these Monday afternoon things? Is this valuable? Should we keep this every week? and I'll just watch as people kind of nod their head, maybe yes, no, maybe. Yeah, Sarah likes them both. She has a hard time following Twitter. Um, yeah, I think it's a good point that Sarah brings up. The Twitter chat lets you kind of jump in and out. You can engage and disengage at different points. And I think all of us do that through the chat. I know I do. You know, at certain points I disengage and I see my email pop and it tells me something and I go over there real fast and I come back. But I think it's just different. Yeah.
My problem with Twitter is if I disengage, I feel like I've missed 20 messages.
Well, yeah, there could be that too, is that suddenly you're scrolling backwards and trying to figure out what the heck was even saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that could be tricky. But I think as it goes, we'll keep these both going. Like Pamela says, she likes connecting with the group. I do too. I like this. I think we get a different group here than we get on Wednesday nights. We get some of the same group, but we get a different group also, which is good. And so I think it's a nice opportunity to see these different groups. I don't know if it makes sense to kind of pair these conversations together each week. Maybe that's a conversation.
Well, that was going to be my question to you, Mike. Do you envision like Monday being the video version of Wednesday, or do you envision them diverging and being kind of two separate, maybe same topics, but like if we're on Zoom, does it afford us the ability to do like, I don't know, group brainstorming in a Google Doc, whereas a Twitter chat wouldn't do that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or some kind of shared screen activity.
Right.
And I almost think of it, Alyssa, almost as the opposite way. Does Monday act as a follow-up to the previous Wednesday? Right. But, it's two sides to the same coin, I guess. Where the conversation starts on Wednesday, has its opportunity to kind of thread through a little bit.
And then we pull out the pieces
on Monday and we kind of build on it a bit in a more collaborative way.
I have to say, I really like the idea. I don't know who was saying that because I'm not actually looking at my screen, but the idea of having a Zoom chat, but then having a group Google Docs, so that really just key points from the discussion could be, all of us could be writing, and some key points. Because I think the other thing is, as long as I've been in AT, I still feel constantly that it's total information overload. And so I think that even in Twitter, there's lots and lots to go back and look at, but it's so much information. And I think that if in a Zoom chat, if anyone wants to write down something that's just a really key thing or important or a contact or whatever, then I think going back on that would be awesome. And I would love that. Yeah. I would love a Zoom chat with a Google Doc that we really just write down some of the more essential. And I know different people think different pieces of information are essential because we're all at different places and doing slightly different, somewhat different things. But still, that kind of group collaboration on Google with a Zoom, I think would be an awesome idea.
Yeah, I think it would be too. I think it goes back to that idea of from our AT Summit last week, using those shared Google Notes for those presentations with that idea of exactly what you just said, Bridget, is that different people in different spots, different people finding certain pieces to be more valuable to write down than others. And suddenly what you have is a fairly comprehensive snapshot of that time that everybody was together. And you're doing it just like Lauren said, we're pulling each of these different modes to kind of find this information and kind of gather it up. I like the idea of this town hall supporting the conversation that happened the last week on AT Chat, because then the questions were already out there. We could you could preload the questions in your brain a little bit, and we could have very pointed kind of discussions about each one with some kind of extension activity to work on. It gives this time a bit more structure, which, as we can see, it has almost none right now. So I'm game for that. What the heck?
Well, and I think, sometimes we have those chats, we have those weeks where we have, one or two questions which everybody kind of dives into and become like very focal points for conversation, where we almost feel like we could have spent the entire session talking about that one question or two questions. Whereas if we're going to, you know, float through in this model, then, you know, we could extend and bring those two questions where we felt like we had more to say, or that the group as a whole wanted to do more brainstorming or discussion about, float those to the Monday conversation.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think about the chat from last week was kind of that welcome me back, kind of how is your process looking different? And that's what kind of resonated with me when I'm like, what is our conversation? What would today look like? And it was that, it's like what was our, and it's what I put up on the screen, is how did your experiences from the spring, when it all kind of, let's call it what it was, came off the rails and we had to figure it out. How did that impact the way we do stuff now? Now that we've had time to digest that, reflect on it a little bit, and adjust our practice, did that change the way we do things now?
Well, and I think even though those of us who, so this is week 4 for us.
That's crazy to me, by the way, too. But
yeah.
Okay.
So our original start date was actually August. We changed dates twice.
Mm-hmm.
Our original start date was the 10th of August, and we pushed it all the way to the 31st. So we started on the 31st. So this is week 4 for us. And even the difference between week 1 and week 4 to me is huge in terms of, you know, week 1 and 2, I did not go in a classroom. Like, I was like, y'all don't want to see me. I'm okay seeing you virtually. Like, let's do what we have to do. And, you know, and then trying to kind of gain on it where, you know, I try very hard to schedule like either one student home visit or one school visit a day and not cross paths. Like, I still come to my office necessarily, but I'm not school hopping this year. Like, I'm trying really hard in the places that I can avoid it to, you know, do what I'm going to do at one school and then be my office, because I don't want to be that vector as much as possible. But and I think that's part of what we were thinking when we started talking in the spring, like one of those things that we were concerned about, and I'm now seeing it play out, just trying to kind of be cognizant of where I am and what I'm doing, and limit that exposure, both for their sake and my sake.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm having that exact conversation with a team right now who want me to come in to their school as quick as possible. But I had said to them, look, I'm going to be in your district next week, but I'm already going to be at a school and I'm trying to stay in that school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll come to you guys the next time I come in. I don't want to be, just like you said, I don't want to be hopping around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still surprised they're going to let me in the district, and I'm not convinced I'm going to get in. I haven't been there yet. They tell me I can get in because I have this magic staff badge, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in. So I might be doing it remotely from my car in the parking lot. So who knows? But
yeah, it's actually amazing how much work is happening in the parking lot now. The number of times I go and pick up equipment and I make sure it's all charged before I pick it up, and then I go sit in my car and work.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
I think it is. I think that's part of what this looks like now, which is so interesting as we think about how to navigate this.
Oh, it's totally different. Totally.
Yeah, it's completely different. It really is. And I think that while it's different, now we're starting to see some of this stuff where we have to figure it out. We have to figure out this assessment piece. I think people gave a lot of slack in the spring for new assessments, but the person I'm talking to, the case manager I'm talking to, that's kind of over. It's like, okay, look, we're back and we need to do this assessment for somebody. So how are we going to do it? I'm reading the chat at the same time.
I think potential to do a lot of really great informal observation now too. So in Google Forms, you can set it up so people can upload videos or upload any sort of documentation. And so that's what they've used in the past. So they've just had a parent videotape the child and then have them upload that video directly to my Google Drive. And then be able to get some really good data off of that video. And really, I mean, what does that video show me? It shows me where they're really struggling and real life. It's not just some, standardized assessment I'm giving, but I'm actually seeing where they're struggling and then can better support in that way. So that's one thing that I've done. And when I did AAC evaluations, I connected with parents however they wanted to. connect. So in our district, we have some families that are on social media, and so they would send me videos through Facebook, and I wasn't necessarily friends with them, but they could private message me, and as long as they emailed me and said, hey, check your private messages, I would know to go in there and I could see the video of the student using their communication device or where the breakdown was happening, and then offer suggestions through coaching during that session. So I think just getting creative, and my own kids are doing virtual learning, and they're doing some of their beginning of the year assessments. And the teachers just say, you can't help the student during this assessment. So they're doing some PALS testing, and my daughter did her writing, her spelling words that she had to do, and they were on a Google sheet. The parents or the teachers recorded each word, and then they just wrote it down on their whiteboard, and we took a picture of it, and I didn't help her at all. So I think there's a lot of great ways that we can still be doing assessments even virtually.
Yeah, I think so too. I think right. I think we've passed the point of that frantic panic, and now we're like, all right, we can do what would we do normally, and how are we going to do
Speak for
that?
yourself, Mike. You might have passed that stage. Some of us haven't.
All right, so maybe I still am a little bit, but I'm trying to portray an image of everything's going to be fine right here. Look, there it is. Everything's fine. Yeah, no, I hear you. So look at us.
Can I interject from
ahead,
Katy, Texas? I can tell you that in the spring, everybody was on, like this critical. Basically, we shifted gears over a weekend.
Yeah.
Had very little time to get into that mode, and so what happened in our administration area was they wanted to streamline the people that were involved in the new, how we're going to develop this format. And so I kept saying, what's my role here? You're home and you're trying to be helpful and you want to, be at the table, but they wanted to limit the amount of voices at the table because they were trying to, it was critical need. And so our IT person ended up answering a lot of the AT questions, which, the nice thing about that person was she came to a lot of our AT team meetings. So we are, in some areas, I felt like that was okay, but I was still a little concerned with that. So what's happened now is the district has decided on its platforms. It's become much more fine-tuned as far as what we're going to do. And so now AT can deal, we're providing the devices to the students that we support. We're much more in the mix, and now we are back in our office again. So we're doing our Zooms, we're doing our trainings remotely. We have some kids who are face-to-face. So I feel like now we're in a much better place. Where in the spring, I kept trying to find where my footing is, other than providing resources and dealing with hotspot issues. But it's still different than how I like to do it.
Yeah, we can get back to, Patty, this idea of proactively working through problems versus this constant reaction. And so that's a good thing. And it's nice that you had that person that was involved, that IT person. And it's good to hear that person had some expertise or some understanding of AT, which is huge, right? Because then you have a voice at that table. But you're right. How many times were people in the spring just not ready to even have the conversation about assistive tech yet? They just weren't ready. There were 9,000 other conversations that had to happen and be resolved before they could even get to that conversation. Now I feel like we've started to work down to that conversation in some places, not in all, because I still have some people that I speak to that are just not ready to have this conversation yet.
Well, I find their teachers now are responding to our emails, which before may or may not have been, but everybody's kind of connected to their technology. And I think if we talk about things from a more UDL perspective, they kind of get that a little better. And so that's kind of, we're saying, hey, these are flexible options, you can consider. And so their teachers are more receptive to that, I think. But that's just how we've been seeing it.
Yeah, and I think it's good. I think you're right. People are more receptive to these flexible options now. because they're seeing these flexible options as a very powerful tool to solve an immediate need of theirs for their classroom,
Yeah.
for their instruction, to work with their students, and if they're in different spots.
Absolutely. So we were really lucky where I am in that when our district as a whole for our LMS is using Canvas. And when they first started that conversation, they decided they were going to do kind of two different training sessions in Canvas. So asynchronous modules. And in the second asynchronous module, the very first section is, oh gosh, planning with diverse learners in mind. I forgot what I called it. That's pretty bad. So I was very fortunate that they said, let's in the very forefront, I had a colleague of mine do a whole section on UDL. And then we talked about specific tools. Now we're fortunate we have Snap and Read district wide. We have never had so much interest or use of Snap and Read. And we have had it to some extent for 5-6 years now. And so we're starting to see the number of parents that have bought in, the number of teachers that are now on board. I hate to say it, but like, this is like a huge silver lining. Like, I'm not wishing that a pandemic came so that we had Snap and Read being used, but the flip side or the upside is that we have teachers thinking about planning in a way that makes their job easier because it's UDL and makes our students' job easier to answer, and using tools like Pear Deck and Snap and Read that just makes it easier for every kid. And so, I mean, we're kind of like, could we not have any more questions about Snap and Read? But it's a blessing because we've tried for years to get all these gen ed teachers on board, or at least open to the idea to say that their kids are going to be utilizing it. Yeah. And, you know, it's been great to be able to say, you know, did you know you have this tool that you have available? I mean, I'm making lots of videos and doing lots of like quick handouts, but it's been great to see that buy-in that we just didn't have before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It has been great.
We
I've had
have
that too. And yeah, even talking to parents directly and having like little like drop-in times with parents and showing them things, and the district I'm working with, they have Snap and Read also. And showing them what Snap and Read does, and just watching people's almost like their minds explode. You know, like, wait a second, we have this right now. And like, I can say to them on that call, yeah, look up in the corner of your screen. It might be there right this second, just waiting for you to turn it on.
Yeah. And our biggest issues, and then I know, Lauren, you were going to say something. Our biggest issues have been getting people to understand the logging into Chrome portion. And then, you know, if they're using their parents' computer, having the two Chrome profiles be separate, and has been a huge tech issue that we're problem solving. But it's been good because ours is already forced to load on the Chrome extension toolbar when they log into Chrome with their student email or their staff email. Exactly. So if we just get them to do that part of it, then yes, it's just as easy as, oh my gosh, see that icon up there? Go grab it. Yeah. Sorry, Lauren, you were going to say something.
Lauren.
Oh, that's okay. You know, we have had, this is a huge silver lining for us as well. And we also had a significant change in our administration who really understands UDL and is starting to and interested in learning more about it. And so through our tiered system of supports, we started talking about and messaging to families and teachers across our district what is already available that you might not be using fully. And so those things are like, we have a district-wide license for read and write. So we're working on making a one-pager and then also messaging it to families. We already have a lot of things like that, but just like making a little updated new one. We also are making a one-pager for some vision supports, like how your vision hygiene, like the 2020 rule, and also like ergonomics. So Alyssa, like what you and Judy Schoonover had done, and that PowerPoint was awesome. I just want you to know that we referenced that again because that was so helpful. And so thank you for all the work that you did there, because that's continuing to support our district. And then we're making a third one-pager. So we have read and write one-pager. We have visual hygiene and ergonomics. And then we have another one about built-in accessibility on your device, like using timers, magnification, and read aloud, because those are probably like the top three that people are using, and how it's already right there at your fingertips, like how to use it and how to do it. So we're sort of, it's more like changing our messaging, but we have so much support from our administrators. So it's been great. They're starting to understand UDL, and we're able to leverage this time to, reach more people. So it's been great. It's been really great. Not that I wanted a pandemic to happen, but I've been on my soapbox for like a zillion years. And so now finally it's happening.
Finally, the
echo,
people they're listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will definitely echo Lauren's statement. I wasn't wishing for a pandemic, but I was shocked last week when I got to be part of a staff in-service day, which I'm part of every year for the special ed staff and the related services. And I mentioned Bookshare, and it's the same conversation I've had every year for, I don't know, way too many years. But all of a sudden people were like, wait a second, you're telling me I can get these books for this student who has this on their IEP right now? And I kept saying to them, yes, thinking in my head, it's the same thing I told you last September, but okay, yes, you can. And it's right there. And it works with this thing called Snap and Read that you already have, and they can use it. And it's all there. You don't do anything else. And I finally got people to listen, and that was exciting.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that between Bookshare and Learning Ally, those numbers. And where I'm finding the best approach, honestly, is I'm having parents that are reaching out to me about Snap and Read. And I happen to be able to know that their kids would end up, I'm not going to, volunteer it if I know their kid's not ESE. Right. But once I know that they are, I'm like, hey, did you know that you could get that world history book? Now, apparently our district is very well known for getting books that Bookshare and Learning Ally don't have yet. Random, 10th edition AP Florida edition that probably Bookshare will never have.
Yeah.
I think that the shift is starting to happen because we had leadership in special education that was talking to our assistant superintendent for Department of Teaching and Learning. So she's in charge of both special ed and gen ed. And because of this, it's becoming more of a gen ed initiative, because UDL, as you know, it's not a special ed initiative. It's, it's gen ed. So we needed some traction there, and it's finally happening. And we're also talking about how this reaches some other populations, like our L learners, our English learning students, and some of those students that, it sort of captures those students that otherwise would need an assistive technology evaluation, but they really just need like read aloud through read and write, or they just need like a little bit of support. So so that's been awesome, to harness that.
Yeah, it's a great moment to realize that we can talk about these UDL supports, or these kind of tiered supports that we can drop for everybody. And Lauren, the things you're mentioning, those are things everybody should know about anyway, right? That's the beauty of this, is that we're not making the whole process more complicated for people. We're just highlighting to them the things that are sitting right there, right now.
Right. I think people love to read those things on like Facebook, and it's like, this is the hack for your phone. You should have, or like, this is how you really use the saran wrap the way it was meant to be. And you're like, okay, but people are so interested in that because they're like, oh, I have that. Was I really not aware? And they don't have to say to anybody else, oh, I was in the wrong. I didn't know that's how you're supposed to use it. They kind of just self-reflect and oh, okay. And then they just start using it, and they don't, it changes quickly that way.
Yeah. And it seems to be changing more quickly when we reach someone. I'm getting better transmission of my message across teachers now. And I'm going to guess that that's because they're talking a lot more to each other about how they're doing things. And suddenly I'm getting more emails from some of these schools saying, hey, I know you talked to so-and-so who talked to so-and-so who talked to so-and-so, and they want to know if you can help them too. I'm like, well, sure, of course. But they're spreading almost like their game of telephone. Like, there's this thing called Snap and Read. Then there's this thing called something and read. And then there's this thing called it'll read your computer out to you. And it loses all of it in the end. But at least they're starting to talk about it a bit, and we're getting some movement on the
Well,
message, which
I
is
think
good.
those teachers are hitting that area of felt need where it finally is affecting them. Maybe they've
Yeah.
had a kid out, in their classroom, but when you start showing it to them and I say, hey, you remember, those 50,000 things you're having to read, that blah blah blah. I said, did you know you could use it to do that too? And so, like, trying to kind of hit that like perfect medium between, here are all the tools you could use with your students, and here's how it could benefit you with the amount of reading you're doing on the computer right now.
Right.
Let's listen to part of that. And I think just that the time is right for there to be this, again, like we're helping their felt need, and they're open, and they're ready.
Because they're
And
having to learn so many other new things all at once. So they're like really open when you say this is something that's going to help you do your job easier.
right.
Because every teacher has to be a first year teacher teaching in distance, and they have to be open. Otherwise, they
They're gonna
resign
sink.
or
Yeah.
retire because
Mhm.
there's just, we got another year or longer of this,
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, it's so true, and it's been a good thing. And again, I keep reiterating this to teams because I don't want to see us slide backwards to where we were. And so now I'm like on the hunt to make sure I don't see a group sliding backwards. Um,
What
um,
are you looking for to preempt that?
I guess it's really just about being more in their space and being part of their conversations more. And at that point, since I can't be in all their buildings, I feel like if I can just be present in their conversation, and I'm sure you guys feel this too, sometimes just the fact you're on the call makes them remember the things you keep harping on. You don't have to talk. You literally just need to sign in, and they need to see my name show up in the participant list. And sometimes that's enough to be like, oh, there's that guy who always
It's
talks about snap and read.
it's the same thing as a teacher standing next to that student who's not on task. That proximity reminder is
Yeah.
just enough to.
Just enough. Yeah. It's the little nudge. And sometimes that's a good thing to keep them in line. And um, there's one group that I used to work with last year. I'm not working with them this year. Um, but I still am on their email thread. And I don't think anybody realizes I'm still on the email thread. So I'm seeing the kinds of things they're talking about, and there's a bit of a slip backwards in their thinking of how to approach their learning materials and the kind of idea of accessibility and inclusive kind of thought of how they might put stuff together. Um, and so I didn't want to alert them that I was on the string of emails. So I reached out to somebody that I'm friendly with who's on the string also. And I said, hey, by the way, I see you guys talking about this. I don't think they know I'm there, but maybe if you could suggest this to the group, this might refocus them back to some of their thoughts that we were doing really well with in the spring. And I just feel like they've kind of lost that a little bit. So it's sneaky, and I don't care, and I like it, and I'm all right with it. I've come to grips with it, so I'm okay with it. It's fine.
It's sneaky for a good purpose.
It is. That's right. As long as something's sneaky and shady, and it has a good
Hey, I didn't go as
comes
far
from a
as
good
shady.
heart. I throw shady, and it's fine. But yeah, maybe it's more sneaky. It's not really shady, but yeah, I don't mind doing that. It's okay. I see you guys talking in the chat. I was trying to see what people are talking about. Um, pulling information and materials together. That's always
Yeah, we were also just saying, so Sandy and myself and my colleague Marby has been on here many times before too, and we're so lucky they were listening, and they started an accessibility working group,
yeah.
and it's been amazing. So like those are the things that I think for us are indicators that we might not be sliding backwards when things go back face to face, because we have this group of people and this investment. And so I don't know necessarily how to replicate that. I guess, like, if you have a team of people that are coming together and that are committed to the work, and recognize like the equity disparity, and that it's across, it's not just web accessibility, it's
Mhm.
transportation accessibility, building accessibility, like AT, we cross over everything. So we're aware of these things, but it involves like assistant superintendents and supervisors in different areas. So to have a group come together And interestingly, we had some parents. We had a parent who had a visual impairment, and she came in to our group. And then we also have a parent who has a student that's a power chair user. She's in our group. And this has helped to broaden the scope and view, and allow them to speak about their challenges from a first person perspective, or like supporting their student. And I think that's great, because immediately after the parent who had a visual impairment participated in this group, a message went out to all staff, because we were using Seesaw, and Seesaw doesn't work with screen readers.
Mm-hmm.
And because this parent was on this group, she was able to say, hey, I have a vision impairment. I can't see to support my student, and I'm supposed to be the main support person at home for the student. So things like this it's not just me saying it, now it's community members saying it, and there's so many more stakeholders, and people are recognizing that. So much good is coming out of it. And it just, like, I get goosebumps every time we have a meeting. I'm like, yay, they're getting it.
I think that's awesome. Has your group, Lauren, been tasked with something? Like, did someone say to you, we hope that your group will do what? Is it like watchdoggy? Is there just to kind of be present in conversations?
Right now, because I think we're still defining what our mission and vision for the group is, we're still getting those issues out.
Yeah.
Like, what are the issues? Where are they? How are we going to prioritize them? And it allows a platform to do that. I think we're going to be developing that vision and mission, like what we might do about that and how we can take action.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we did similar to that, and this was a couple of years ago, was we actually did accessibility surveys of our campuses.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it led to facilities. We had a member for facilities on there, but we also had a staff member at the time who was utilizing a wheelchair, and some other family members of students who had disabilities participate, because it is a completely different perspective. I can go in and see a barrier, and I may miss the other 3 barriers that a parent who has a vision impairment or a student who's using a wheelchair would very easily pick out and see, because that's their everyday normal. But it was very interesting to have facilities see the other side of that, of, yeah, they know they're supposed to be ADA compliant, but it seems, and this can be dangerous because now you're going to post this on the web, but it seems like facilities makes a change only when they really have to. And I don't know if that's everywhere, but like,
well, we talked about the difference between ADA and, like, if something's compliant and what are our standards. Like, a playground, this was one thing that just, like, came up, and we haven't had a deep conversation about this, but it came up that, like, we have ADA compliant playgrounds, but they don't maybe provide what the standard or hope is for our division. Like, what's our like, we have a part of our vision and mission for our entire school division is about inclusion. And so while it maybe meets ADA compliance, there might be only like one element on the playground that the student can use. And so how does that align with, like, what our standards are for ourselves? Right. So it has opened that conversation. And, like, is it really equitable to say that a student who's a power chair user can only use one element of the playground when everybody else can use 20 or 10? I don't know how many there are, but it's bringing those issues to light.
And I like it, just to kind of piggyback on what Alyssa said. What we're talking about here is this bigger conversation, and I think a lot of times when we think in schools, when we talk about accessibility, it sometimes gets laser focused down to the website is accessible. Okay, great. But we're trying to broaden the conversation a bit too and look at it from those different perspectives, because I think that a lot of times mobility impairments and cognitive impairments, those things aren't thought of as quickly as supports for perhaps someone with a visual impairment and thinking about access to information. And so it's nice to have these broad conversations about that, but wrap it all up in this idea of accessibility or inclusion. And what does that mean for us as a school community? And how are we going to promote that? across everything we do. What's
Yeah,
that
and I think
equity
it's
look like?
educating some of the groups too, because like I don't think our facilities or transportation really knows about 508 compliance
Yeah.
or about like captioning of videos and how this is a systemic issue about equity for students. And so, yeah, I think it's really good because everybody's doing some learning.
I think so too. And everybody has an opportunity to take some little nugget of a of a best practice and apply it in some way. And then those little bits make us as a school community all that much better because it's all these little nuggets being applied, and then that starts to become something that we do. And it's funny that you think about how you do these activities all the time, and it becomes second nature. Um, I had a conversation with someone the other day because we were on a Zoom call, and I just by default now put up some kind of slide all the time, and I run the captions every time. Most times I'm the leader of the Zoom room and it's my Zoom room, so I automatically share my screen and do that. And so I don't even think twice about that. I just do it. And someone had emailed me the other day and they said, "Well, why are you doing that? Because there's no one on here that needs that." And I waited, and I didn't write back right away. I did one of those cool moves where you wait for a little while. You write the email, and then you let it sit, and you just wait, and you don't send it. But in between, when I didn't send it, someone else from the meeting had emailed me personally and said, "Hey, I really like when you do that because it helps when I turn away to do something and turn back. I can get a sense of what people were talking about. And sometimes I need to turn the sound off to take a phone call while we're doing the meeting, and I can still follow along." And I asked them, "Can I take your little comment and can I share that with someone else?" And they said, "Sure." And so I pasted that into the email back to the person. I cleaned out the other stuff that I was going to say to them originally. And I wrote and I said, "These are great examples of best practices that are inclusive for everyone. So when you say no one here needs that at the moment, that's not true." And so think about that in a broader sense of how captioning in this case could be powerful for anybody on the call.
Well, and I think them just having, even just generating the conversation about whether it's needed or not, and how it is beneficial for everyone, including those with an invisible disability that someone may never even know about. I think just being able to even broach the subject, I think it's what people just don't know. It's you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then once you have that conversation, I've never had anybody be like, after you talk about why, be like, "Well, that's still a horrible idea."
Right,
They're
exactly.
like, sometimes they have logistics questions, or they're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to do that." But like, it's never well, those are stupid reasons. It's just they've never even thought about it from that perspective before, and once they know better, they work on trying to do better.
Exactly. And
We
that's
had to
exactly
do
what
a
this
little
is.
myth dispelling. Like we had to say to people, if the ASL interpreter or the cued language transliterator is there, it's not distracting. Like some people would say, but it's distracting and it's taking away from the teacher's instruction. And so we had to do a little bit of myth dispel, that it's not, it's actually enhancing and it's making it accessible. So, sometimes
It's kind of actually interesting talking about the captions, because I've been driving but stopping periodically. I had to run in and go pick up some equipment, and I've been actually carrying my iPad around with me so I can listen to the conversation. But sometimes the audio has been cutting out. So anytime the audio cuts out, I can see what's being said because the text isn't cutting out, but the audio is. So I think there are many, many different levels that captions help on. It's really not just for people with impairments, with specific impairments.
Exactly. And I think to go to Alyssa's point, this is a great opportunity for us to build a bigger understanding of what we're doing here, and to think about that. And you're right. I think it does create that secondary conversation of that conversation of, "Oh no, how am I going to do that?" That's a totally different conversation, and that's okay. But I think to get somebody at first to recognize the value of doing it and why we're doing it, and we're promoting this idea of accessibility for all, regardless of what you might what abilities you come with to the meeting. So I think that becomes really important. And then it leads to a great conversation about how you do that. And with built-in captions in a lot of our stuff now, it's not nearly as hard as people think it is. And I think that's a win too. Because people say, oh, well, that's not so bad. All I have to do is turn on a slide. Or I have to do is go to Otter and just turn that on the screen as I go, or web captioner, and it just picks it up. I mean, those things are relatively straightforward, and a lot of times you don't need extra equipment to do that decently. There'll always be, unless we're having a person transcribe it, there'll always be little hiccups. But, I think we have a lot of opportunity to get a pretty good representation of what's being said at the moment.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were talking in the chat about how something I'm working on is getting our local school board meetings to have captions. Mm-hmm. And it came up. I haven't really watched the board meetings, but a friend of mine has ADHD and she has been having a really hard time. There's been like some contentious board meetings and she says the mics are cutting out. She can't focus on like these, hot button topics and also be like listening to the audio. And she said, even when she goes back and rewatches them, she can't get everything. So she called me and she said, isn't this kind of what you do? So then I reached out to Hillary and she's been helping me kind of get it going. But it's not, always a disability that you would think of, like we talked about, like the invisible disabilities and stuff like that. And you never know, once you get the captions up there, who else is gonna benefit from it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it shouldn't be a person coming and saying, I have a disability, can you make this accessible for me? It should just be accessible.
Yes, correct. Right. It has to be built in. It has to be built in now. The days of claiming this is too hard to do are long gone. The technology's there to do this in a way that can happen relatively quick.
Yeah, Mike, I know we're probably over time, but have you or anybody heard anything about whether Zoom is really looking at doing embedded captions, or are they just sufficiently happy to let people, like Rev or Otter, pair with them? Or are they ever going to do it built in?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything specifically. It would be wonderful if they did. And I saw Sarah dropped in there about Google Meet. That is the one thing in Google Meet that is, I will call that feature fantastic because of the fact that it ties it to the person speaking also, which is such a beyond what we're getting and everything else. I love that idea of I can see who said what.
And I'm hoping it's going to make its way from Google Meet into what you're using right now, because it's the same program that's running the two of them. You'd think that they could make the captioning.
Like we use Microsoft Teams, and so then you have to say, this is Lauren, before you speak, and which we're getting in the practice of, but it's not, people sometimes don't know, and then just because it's, So
it's tricky. And we have that too. If we do a Zoom meeting and we're using the slides, I know in our office we do this, and we have some staff members that need this support. They need it as an accommodation. And so we're trying to get in the habit of saying, this is Mike, and then I start. But a lot of times we don't, like Lauren just said. And what I've been trying to do in some of those meetings in the chat is just write the name of who's talking at that minute. And sometimes but again, that's a simple solution to that as we continue on this learning process of saying who we are. The slide I've been using in some of those meetings at our office now, the only thing on the slide, it says, speak slowly so captions can keep up. That's all, and it's there the whole entire time. That's all that shows up on the slide. And that's been helping because you can hear people start to talk fast, and then they must look at the screen and then they instantly slow down. Like there is a moment where it's like kicking into a lower gear, and they must have looked at the screen, because then it gets much better. So I think there's some of those tricks also. All right, yeah, we've gone too far. Now it's 10 after 1. We've done all we can do today, guys. This was a good conversation for not really having a plan. See, having a plan's overrated quite often.
I was going to say, I think those are sometimes our best conversations, are the no planned ones.
Yeah, I agree.
So good job for not having a plan, Mike.
I'm all for not having a plan. I'm all about that. If you could sum me up in a nutshell, that's it. Not having a plan, just letting it go, man. What we'll do as we go forward, I'll try to think of some of these Wednesday night AT chats and like some of the core questions or conversations that resonated with people. And we'll try to bring these few forward to our Monday conversations, and we'll see how that works. So we'll do that as our plan. All right. Keep the Monday Zooms. Patty, you got it. We're keeping them because you don't like Twitter. So we're going to try that. Call me no plan. That's fine. I'm all for that. NP. All right. Very good. Guys, thank you. It's a good conversation. I will post it up online so we can watch it later. I'll try to edit out where Alyssa makes fun of people in IT. But I probably won't, actually. I'll just put it up just like it is. All right, guys. Have a good rest of the day. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.